All right, we're going to call the August 22nd Park Board meeting to order. We'll start with roll call.
Miller.
Here.
Rushmeyer.
Here.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Scheit.
Here.
Yeager.
Yes.
Next, the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next we have approval of the agenda. Member Yeager.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. I would like to add, at kind of where you see fit, just a quick discussion on the ski loons, the agreement that we have with the ski loons currently, please. I would propose that we do that under new business as item F, please.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second it. Rushmeyer.
Any discussion on the change to the agenda, or the agenda itself? All right, all in favor of the change to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved with new item 8F. Next, we have the consent calendar. Notice to the public, all matters listed are considered routine by the board and will all be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless good cause is shown prior to the time the board votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify with the park board and the minutes from the last regular meeting, the discussion regarding the Gregory Park parking policy. The general discussion around the vehicles in the park was centered around event reservations and people that are using those facilities for their events. In the minutes, it says no vehicles. I just wanted to clarify that the park board was intending for no unauthorized vehicles within the park as part of that policy.
Do we need a motion for that, or is that just?
Can we pull, Mr. Chair, can we pull from the minutes who was the speaker at that time, or who that was taken from?
What I'm reading is, in regard to the parking policy, no vehicles are allowed on the grass in our parks. Special events would be a case-by-case basis. Motion was made by you, seconded by Kara.
So I'll clarify for, just for the record here, the intent of that motion was all vehicles.
I would second that.
So not staff either, you're saying?
Correct.
About like a tree trimming?
I think that I guess the original intent of that was a case-by-case basis on need, so I kind of thought that covered, if we need to get guys in there to trim trees, to do heavy work. My thinking is that we could certainly have a discussion about it. I think the impetus of that, of what I said there, was just the daily traffic in and out.
Sounds like we already voted on it. So it says what it says, but if I may, Mr. President?
Yeah, Troy.
Jesse, does staff have a different view on this, that they need to drive in there to do certain things on certain days?
Generally, the staff does bring in their materials on site from the shop or from wherever they're able to locate those things. We do regularly have to bring in vehicles for things like moving picnic tables, the satellite trash cans, and all those different pieces. We don't have the means or methods to do that without a vehicle currently, and would be very difficult for staff to do at this time.
Dave.
So this would be something that would need to come up as a separate agenda item if it needs to. This is simply for clarification of the meeting minutes, so.
Okay.
So maybe we need to revisit that.
Isn't it already on our agenda for today? Letter E?
Yes, we could clarify this as part of
Okay.
that. That's a good point.
Mr. President, if I may?
Yeah, Troy.
Also, I have under discussion on cannabis in the parks, it says that a motion regarding, let's see, A motion was made by Board Member Rushmeyer to leave our views on smoking in the parks as is. This would mean that no smoking of any products is allowed in our parks. I don't believe that was correct. I think it was to leave as is, which is there's no smoking 100 feet from playgrounds and any youth events. And I think that's it. I don't think our policy is no smoking anywhere in the park. So I think that needs to be changed.
Yes. So what we can do then, we can approve the disbursements and the financial reports and bring the minutes back next meeting?
You can also amend the minutes with those clarifications.
Oh, neat. Would you like to say the same thing but in a motion?
Yes, I would like to amend the minutes to say, let's see, no smoking of any products allowed in our parks according to the current process, if you will, which is 100 feet from any playground and not anywhere near, and I think it's the same for any youth events, 100 feet within any youth event, so.
You could just simply remove the second line there also. It says
Yes,
leave as is.
correct.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, your motion, Troy, is to remove everything from the, after the dash to the end of the sentence.
Correct, yep.
Cool. Anyone like to second?
Yeah, I'll second the amendment.
Any further discussion? Dave?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that what Kevin Yeager's comments were, are being left as is. Because there has been clarification on it. Are you adding the clarification on it? Because really what this is not a changing of what was said. This is just simply to make sure that the minutes reflect what was said. So if there's different comments to be made, that is a completely different issue. But to reflect what Kevin has said, is that what we're saying, is that those comments reflect what you were saying?
That's correct. What I just mentioned is that the conflicts are in conflict with themselves. The first part of the statement says to leave the views on smoking on the park as it is, and then the following sentence that says this would mean smoking of any products is allowed in our parks is in conflict with the first sentence. So I was just removing that to just leave it as is, which I believe was your motion, right?
Yes, were you talking about that, Mayor?
No, I'm
Bill?
talking about the first question.
You're talking about
sorry
Gregory Park,
Oh, sorry.
yes.
Because the only thing you're doing here is just clarifying what was said.
And so this is incorrect of what
Correct.
was said, and
Yep, and then we're just,
Mr. Yeager is saying what he said is correct.
correct. Okay, thank you.
Correct?
You got it. Correct.
All right, any further discussion on the motion to amend the minutes? Excellent. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, the minutes have been amended. Would anyone like to move to approve the amended minutes, the disbursements, and the financial?
We'll approve, I move to approve the amended minutes, the disbursements.
Second, Rushmeyer.
Any discussion on these items? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those are approved. Item 8A then, Buster Pavilion quotes. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we went out and solicited several vendors for requesting quotes on the Buster Park Pavilion gazebo structure as it was included in the 2023 capital budget. Just a quick reminder, we did allocate $30,000 for that replacement. We tried reaching out to several vendors to get quotes on prefabricated structures, as it was kind of the discussion when this was left off. I only received 2 responses out of the several that were requested. The first one was from Stoltzfus Structures. Come to find out, when I got the response from them, it was not a prefabricated structure, it was a kit, and that we would have to assemble that with our city staff. And then there's some other pieces that it doesn't necessarily meet the drawing that was included in the packet here. The second one was from St. Croix Recreation. They're also the company that provided the JC's playground. this last year, and this is a prefabricated structure, generally pretty close on the standards and the drawing that was provided. It does not include the bench that was included in the drawing, and slightly different size, but generally kind of in the same realm of what we were talking about with what our design standards are. And it does include a 10-year warranty, and this does fall under the $30,000 budget line item. Does not cover the removal of the structure and prep for the structure. So things like concrete footings that staff would have to put in. This does not include that. So it does fall within the 30,000, but would not have any allowance for the other prep work that would have to go on. We also, for comparison's sake, had 2 quotes from High Tech and Barado Brothers for stick-built structures. Just for quick comparison's sake, the low of those 2 was actually High Tech. This one did include the concrete footings, however, does include $5,000 for metal roof upgrade. You could remove the $5,000 by going with asphalt shingles. It is in a shaded area, so the shingles would hold up more than one that's exposed, but to meet the current standards of the design standards, that would be an extra $5,000 that's included in the 43. It also does include the built-in benches that's shown in the drawings. So if you wanted to pull those benches out, there might be some savings there. They didn't break out that price specifically. And then the final one is Barado Brothers, but obviously that one's quite considerably higher than the budgeted amount. So at this time, staff is recommending approval of the proposal from St. Croix Recreation for the one that's just under $30,000.
Thanks, Jesse. Any questions for Jesse about the options we have?
Just real quickly, will we have control over the color? Will we be able to get the St. Croix option in the colors that meet our design standards? I guess I just didn't see the coloring.
Yes, they have some set different colors, and we can work with them on making sure that it's
Okay.
generally within the standards. The posts might be stained a certain stain,
Yep.
but I believe it's generally
That meets our standard also. Yeah.
in that realm. So all of the vendors were sent not only the drawing, but the design standard spreadsheet. So they all got a copy of that as well.
Thank you. No other questions.
Kara?
What's tongue and groove sealing? And is that something really good because no one else called that out? Is that like something we want?
So that I believe is in the design standard as well as the tongue and groove ceiling. This is very similar to what we have that just got done at Kiwanis Park at the
Okay.
2 buildings.
Yep. Okay, I know what it is then.
The Stoltzfus one, again, it's a kit. They wouldn't provide the extra tongue and groove, and we could have those added into the other 2, but it would be an extra expense.
Sure. And this does include the bench?
The one from St. Croix does not.
It doesn't?
If we wanted to provide some seating, we could do that with picnic benches or something like that, but it does not include it. Like I said, it's prefab structure, so.
I definitely took it out, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Any discussion on the options?
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may. Yeah, I think the only discussion I have is just we removed this from our budget for next year. So if, I think this is pending the budget discussion, correct?
No, because it was in this year. We took
Okay,
it
got it.
next year.
Okay, took it out of this year, put it in next year.
Nope, sorry. So we have 30,000 in this year's budget.
Okay, got
In our
it.
discussion
Still
last
to
week.
execute in this year?
Yes.
Okay, got it, never mind.
Oh, go ahead, John.
I'm ready to.
So our budget is 30, we're at 29, but then there's still more to be added. So will we go over our budget of 30,000 then, if we have staff doing things and adding the bench or the table or?
If we allocate the funds that are going to be needed for like the concrete footings, then yes, we would be over budget. Otherwise, we'd have to find somewhere else in the budget to allocate that dollars to.
So this is where I would, I'm not really good with construction, so I don't know if we would need to do that or how you guys
I would say we do
On the footings?
on the footings.
Yeah, for sure.
Say we have to.
Yep.
I just have a comment, Mr. President, if I may.
Yeah, Troy.
It's just some, I really struggle with this. It's just, especially in lieu of what's been happening with the budget and what we've put into stuff. And I think it started out as a $7,000 project and now we're at $30,000 and that's without the benches. And unfortunately, if we have to pick one, I think what staff recommends is our best option, especially with the unknowns, all the unknowns with the Stoltzfus structure. I don't know if I said that right, Jesse, or not, but I tried.
We can move picnic tables over there to sit too.
Yeah.
I do like that the roof overhang is pretty large.
Yeah.
I think standing there while your dog's doing stuff is also nice, even if you don't want to sit, so. Seems like a nice feature.
Jonathan, you're going to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the St. Croix Recreation plan.
I'll second, Jaeger.
Any discussion on the motion?
Where will the money come from to pay for the additional boards or whatever you guys mentioned?
Framing,
This-
we're gonna self-perform it, right?
The footings and,
Understanding? The sonotubes?
The footings, I'm guessing we might have some additional dollars elsewhere in our capital that, from some savings elsewhere. So we should be able to find those funds elsewhere otherwise through operating maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. That is approved. 6B, discussion on park dedication funds for softball field netting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff received a request from an individual about installing protective netting in between softball fields 1 and 2 at Memorial Park. We looked into this a little bit, and Katie was able to resource a little bit from Baxter as well. They put in some similar installations, and having it professionally installed, you're pushing about $30,000, give or take, and that was a few years ago. Looking at what we have in park dedication funds, we have just over $20,000 available in the banner program for the softball fields. So we had a few different options for the park board to consider. One would be just outright denying the request. Second would be to allow the installation without the use of park dedication, and just directing staff to let them know that, hey, maybe you should fundraise for this instead, or utilizing our park dedication funds for the installation. So just looking for some direction from the park board, how they'd like to handle the request.
Mr. President,
Troy.
if I may. Katie, did someone get hurt?
No, this was just an individual. It's year after year, we receive requests for a safe spot for children to be at the softball fields where they don't have to worry about a ball hitting their kid. And I think this was just an option. They fall through the trees. I mean, yes, they slows down the ball, but you see it at a lot of different baseball facilities, the netting. No one has gotten hurt, to my knowledge, as a fan from a foul ball at this point.
Okay. I did hear someone actually just developed or had a concussion from being hit by a ball last week. Yep. That's just word of mouth, so that, kind of know him pretty well, but, Jesse, you mentioned professional netting. Has anyone looked into like just netting going from fence to fence? That's instead of having going way up and just something basic through there. And the other part is that doesn't do anything for down the first and third baseline hazards, correct?
Correct. You'd probably have to have a little bit stronger posts than what's on the chain link to support it, as well as the cabling or wire that runs along with it too. So you'll need a little bit more than what's out there for the fencing.
Kevin?
Don't we have trees growing right down in between these where we're trying to put this netting?
Yeah, we trimmed the branches off them.
I know we trimmed the branches, but I'm seeing, if we're using the model that was cited at Baxter, that lays horizontally in between the fields. Is that what we're trying to do?
That's what you're saying.
I- So the dugouts, not, so we would go on the other side of the dugouts, and I think that's right on the edge of where the last tree is, right there.
I see.
So it'd be like more of the alleyway,
Oh,
like
not down where the trees are.
not exactly where the trees are, but it'd be an extension of the trees almost, if that makes sense.
So from the dugouts back to
Dugouts.
towards the concession stand?
No,
Other
dugouts
way.
towards Field 3.
The other direction.
Yep.
Understood. Just one follow-up quick thing. I will, it was some time ago, and I was somewhat jesting when I said it, but I recommended that we use the park dedication funds to help pay for the $50,000 lights. I'm still kind of in that opinion, so I'm not going to be supporting using the park dedication funds to put new structures out up there. So it's a large park. It seems to me that there are plenty of places for kids. The playground equipment's been over there. We have no incidents that we've heard of, so I will not be supporting this.
I think the other part of Jesse's request too was if they were to fundraise, would we be willing to take on the maintenance?
We would, in my opinion, if it was a fundraised items and they placed it, they get the lifespan of that one, the one life cycle of those nets, and then would need to fundraise after that. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Just don't want to take on the burden of owning nets now.
Kara? Oh,
Yep, I would agree that I do not want to see the park dedication funds drained out for this item. I'd prefer to keep them for something that we already need to maintain, because that kind of, it goes along with what our message was last night to council, and even if that changes, I think we still need, I think that's still our core, what we're looking to do, so I would not support this either.
Mr. President? Troy. I think if you were to fundraise and raise the funds for it, and I don't see a lot of labor in putting it up, and/or repairing a net. I mean, we repair the nets on the batting cages quite regularly, I think with very little labor. I think one part we have to look at is this isn't just kids. Any one person could get nailed with the ball, and, I mean, if we can provide some safety out of something that we have very little funds dedicated to, I mean, if this is fundraised for the safety of our community members, you know, and yes, there are other places people can go that are more safe, but if you just happen to be walking through one time, I mean, it might be your lottery number, and so I would not be against using this net here if the money was raised through fundraising. To me, we're not talking a garage or a building or something that, I mean, nets they're quite, if you go to the Brainerd High School, the net that they have coming back over the bleachers is probably, I don't even know how old, but that thing's been mended so many times and so is our nets for our batting cages. So to me, this is low maintenance. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, but I don't think we're talking a lot of labor here to.
It depends. To what we referenced in Oscar, they leave it out all year long, correct? So it's just kind of, if you have to take it down in the fall, there's labor to that. If you leave it up all winter, there's labor to that to keep the snow off from overweighing it down and then keeping it stretched and taut. So there's a little bit of labor to it, but no labor intensive. It's not like maintaining a field, no.
Is it possible to talk to Alex over in Baxter to see how long their net has lasted before we make a decision on this? Alexandro?
Yeah, we reached out to him for some of the idea on the pricing, and that was kind of his comments were the challenges that they've had with that netting is like winter maintenance and keeping it clear and having to restretch it every once in a while and keeping it from sagging any further. That was kind of his comments.
He also did state that the bulk of the pricing actually is in the poles that hold the net up. So it's not necessarily the netting itself. So I don't know if there's a creative way there to save money, but something to look into.
Go for it.
I'd like to make a motion to follow the staff recommendation to direct the petitioner to fundraise for the installation and not utilize the park dedication funds for the netting request.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Excellent. Next up, request to view grant opportunity for Conservation Partners Legacy Grant Program. Jesse and Paul, I'm guessing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Paul and I believe Luke Lundy is on the phone as well to help assist with this presentation. So Paul is going to present on a new, I'll call it new program, but a previous unknown to us grant program, really looking at doing a similar stream bank restoration project south of the bridge that we are doing north of the bridge with Lyman Peeway Park. So I'll turn it over to Paul to describe the program a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Members of the board. So Luke Lundy is on the line, I believe. Brent, is he on? So Department of Natural Resources manages CPL funding, which is Conservation Legacy Partner or Conservation Partners Legacy Funds. Luke, is that the acronym?
The acronym is CPL, yes, Conservation Partners Legacy Funding.
Right, and so it's a competitive grant program. They have a lot of funding this year. There's quite a few separate pots, and the reason this came up is, number one, you guys have a lot of momentum down in this area already with the Lyman P. White Park project, your riverbank restoration that starts at the park and heads south to College Drive. We feel that this would be a great opportunity for you guys to continue that riverbank restoration further south from College Drive down to, say, the Rotary Park parking lot, which is, I believe, an additional 5,000 feet of riverbank restoration. So basically, there's, like I said, there's a few pots of money that are available. We think you guys would be eligible for the new applicant pool, which is any agency that has not received these funds in the past. The max grant funding amount is $500,000. There's a 10% local match, but that can be in-kind services also. And I think Luke has some strategic ways that he's proposed in-kind services in the past to not likely could reduce or eliminate any kind of in-kind cash that you guys would have to put towards this grant. So if you were awarded in lieu of actually paying 10% into the grant program as your match, you could provide in-kind services like project management, grant management, and things from a city staff level that would count towards that that cash. So like I said, this funding is would be eligible to do a project like we're doing with the Riverbank Restoration Project. I think the applications are due September 19th, and so we're bringing this to you now so that if you guys are interested in it, WSB would do the application for you at no charge, so that we could continue, designing that further down, maybe for construction next fall/winter, like we're doing this year. And Luke, I know you're pretty familiar with the program, and maybe you can cover other things that I haven't covered here in the presentation.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second. I gotta close my door here. Still got a few people in the office. All right, so Conservation Partners Legacy Funds. We apply for these funds all the time. This year, there's a new category, as Paul just discussed. It has to do with new applicants that have never received Conservation Partners Legacy Funds before. So this funding source is for habitat improvement. lakeshore restoration, river restoration, invasive species management. That's what this is for. So when I reviewed this new RFP that came out, I discussed this right away with Paul that, God, if the city of Brainerd's interested, we should just continue south and complete the other section that Jesse had discussed along the Mississippi River. So the great thing about this is you have the ability to match in a couple different ways. One being 10% match in cash, right? The other way you can do it is in-kind services. So if you think about it, we usually include with our applicants the administrative work that you have to do on, administering funds for the grant, or if you're going out for meetings regarding the project, all of that can be added up into an FTE and put a value to that for in-kind services. If you're helping with oversight for the project, if you're having meetings with the contractor on the site, you could put a value to that. You have to record the value of that. So when you're at the end of the project, you're showing that you met your match requirement. But the advantage to this, especially if you have folks that don't have a lot of cash flow, is you can use the in-kind services as your match. Or you could use a combination of them. They like that too, where say on a $500,000 project, you're providing 10 grand, but the rest of your in-kind is match, right? Of in-kind services. So that's the advantage of these Conservation Partners Legacy Grants, similar to LSOHC funds. And the great thing is, some of the requirements are the fact that it's publicly owned or there's some type of easement on it. Well, it's part of the park system, so it qualifies for that. But we have probably applied, let me think, in the last 3 years, probably 10 applications, and 8 out of the 10 we secured funding for. It's all how you write the grant, but it's also you got to view it as though this project for the next is another phase of an overall stream bank restoration or riverbank restoration project. So that way, as you can continue to be moving downstream or upstream for habitat improvement, but in the grant, you really want to discuss the project as a whole, and that, yes, we got funding for the first phase, that's funded, we're doing construction of it. This is the next phase of work. So it's administered by the DNR, but the funding comes into a pot from LSOHC funds, Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council funding. That is our sales tax fund that goes into that grant entity, and then a portion of it goes to DNR for projects that are below 500,000 or below. All right, questions. I see a lot of frowns. What do you got? It's almost kind of, if it's not a match in cash, you're like, well, what's the catch, right? And I'm telling you, there isn't a catch on it. The catch is that we got to make sure if we're able to pursue forward with it, we get to work writing the grant and putting together a budget of what we think the overall project would cost. But we're gonna have to sit down with Jesse and a few of you guys on some other ideas besides some that I've got swirling in my head of what we could propose for this section. So that way we have a solid cost that includes engineering, design, and the construction work.
Jesse?
Just to
Not to rush
clarify,
you by any means, but this is a great opportunity for you.
just to clarify, so staff time helping administer the program. So I'm just clarifying that engineering in all forms are eligible expense.
Correct, yeah.
Yes, they are. That is correct.
So with that being said, excuse me, Mr. President.
Go for it.
that in-service could be handled quite
It would
easily.
it would be Jesse's time, the assistant engineer, attending design meetings, going to construction meetings. Even, if we weren't quite to that dollar amount, the city could have James or Jesse or someone administer a portion of the construction contract so that you're showing that the city has skin in the game at that 10% level, whatever the construction
Don't
cost
forget
is.
the oversight part of it, that includes
Right.
oversight during construction, but the monitoring afterwards. So as long as you're able to put that in a budget sense, line itemed, to come up with that total, as long as you agree that you'll complete that stuff, that is your match, your in-kind match.
How long does that, so if staff is continuing to, maintain the decreased shrubs and whatever, for
There's usually
3 years, does that also, would that also count?
There's typically a warranty
Depends on
period.
how long you have for your duration of your project, of how you write the grant, right? So you can just include it for your, I'll be honest with you, the match between administration of the grant and also during doing oversight stuff for meetings, that usually covers the 10%. Doesn't necessarily have to be on the back end of it with the monitoring, but as Paul just said, if you're a little short, then you can include that also as your contribution to the project instead of coming up with 10% cash out of your pocket. I'm surprised you guys haven't applied for Conservation Partners legacy funds before.
Well, you might find out
But-
why here in a couple minutes. I have just a couple quick questions. Mr. Dean, can you give me an idea of just what engineering staff is billed out to? So hypothetically, say we were to do in-kind services, give me an idea of what you guys would be billing yourselves out at?
My guess is somewhere in the realm of $50 to $60 per hour.
Okay.
And I guess it depends on what scope of work we want to be involved with. We could be involved as little or as much as needed.
So if, roughly about what I was going to say, $50, $80 an hour. That comes out to 833 hours. I think we would be highly challenged to find 833 hours of investment into a project in which we would be literally watching people work on a river. I could be wrong, but that's a lot of hours, So I question whether we would actually be able to develop the in-kind match right off the bat. So I'm a little fuzzy on that. The second thing that I just want to ask, and I do thank you for your presentation here, is this was asked last time a little bit and got kind of a fuzzy answer. I'm still just kind of looking to get my head around what we're going to have for ongoing maintenance down the road 5, 10, 15, and 20 years on not just this project, but the other similar project that we have here. I know that if you plant grass, just grass grows back, but eventually bushes and shrubs and trees and all of that is trying to reclaim itself along the riverbank. I could be wrong, but can you just give me an idea of what kind of maintenance we're looking at on this shoreline, self-performed maintenance, 5, 10, 15 years in the future? Just real quick overview.
So it depends on what species come back, but if we don't have invasives that come in, your maintenance should be fairly minimal with the view sheds that we'll be proposing in the design plan. So if you have low growing vegetation that you're proposing within those view sheds, those are the areas that'll be smaller maintenance, right? If you've got other areas with taller growing stuff, the biggest key is it's the view sheds that you're wanting to really be doing the maintenance on where you could see the river. The other areas, you might get some growth that potentially might take doing some shrub maintenance in the understory. It's not to the degree that you're continually every single year having to do maintenance on this.
Understood. Kind of, yeah. I think I kind of have an idea. it's going to take some degree of maintenance,
Yeah.
depending upon what we want to look like,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's
like-
dependent
it's like,
on
you know,
what you guys want as a final product, right? I mean,
Exactly.
you can leave it grow up like what it is today.
Right.
And maintain only the view sheds. If you want to maintain kind of the full view throughout, when we go and clear out all the underbrush and everything, that's going to require, if that stuff comes back, on whether it's suckers on trees or buckthorn that could potentially come back, because that stuff just grows all the time. So it really depends on the level of service you guys really want to provide.
Thank you. So I'll just tell you where I'm at kind of on this. So timing couldn't be worse, to be
Right.
perfectly honest. So we already have kind of pushed our cards forward with what we think our budget might be for next year. I can imagine if we came back and said, oh, wait a second, to the checkout line, pew, we found something for 50 grand we'd like to shove in here. I could see potentially city council, or members of the city council, kind of going over the handlebars with that type of a mentality. So that's one of the issues that I have here. The other issue is that we've just recently talked about grantitis and the trap that does lead us to. Yep, it's 450 grand worth of work, but it's going to cost you 50 grand. Not sure what the maintenance is going to be. So I love the concept. Wish that it was timed a little bit differently. Wish that we could have planned this into a budget and then maybe worked around it, value engineered it to see if it was really a good fit. But I just feel like this is just too late to the table for me to really get behind this and push it. So I think for that reason, I'm not necessarily saying no, but I'm saying pause button for now on this. And I just couldn't support putting it in for next year. And that's kind of where I'm at. Not that it's not a great thing.
I will tell you this, the advantage that we have with Conservation Partners legacy funding is that it's 2 cycles per year, right? So this is the fall cycle for this year. Come spring, we'll be able to apply. Come next fall at this time, we'll be able to apply.
Fantastic. Maybe a much better fit.
That's the beautiful thing about Conservation Partners legacy funds. The reason why I did talk to Paul about it is because of this new category that they have for new applicants.
Separate from everyone else's.
Got it.
This
Okay.
go around.
Got it.
Great. I'd like to share my screen with you quick on the Frontenac project that I told you I'd show you an example of, if that's all right, if we got a couple minutes.
Yeah.
This has to do with the project we're currently working on.
Correct. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is, this is Valhalla Park over in Frontenac. So as I had discussed with you before, we kind of created these management view zones that you see in blue. To your right is the Mississippi River here, along this Valhalla Park. So these view sheds, similar issue along the Mississippi. They had some high needs in some sections with dense buckthorn that they wanted cleared out so you can actually see the river through the park zone that's here. I've got some photos here also that I want to share with you of what it looks like after we've done the removal. So this is a couple years afterwards. Before, it was covered with box elder and buckthorn, similar to what you see to your right over here, a bit thick. Yes, the ground's a little bit steeper over here in comparison to what you guys are dealing with, but this is after a couple of years. Still have some weeds that are in here, but for the most part, those view sheds of that height of what you want to be able to see to the river itself, it's a lot easier to see it now. It's a lot more open. People can enjoy that through the park area here. So I know we discussed that last time, and I wanted to be able to show you kind of what that looks like in through here. So
Great. Yeah, so we have a sheet in our 60% plans that is basically that view shed sheet. We're going to leave it pretty open-ended so that when we get out into construction, we can go through that with city staff, make sure the view sheds are in the spot that we want them to be, number one, and two, that the plantings that we're putting in, the trees, are away from the view sheds, obviously, and that the lower sedge or whatever it is in those areas is the only thing planted. And then also, as far as what types of trees are being planted, we've made a request to city staff to help understand what trees are a priority for you guys according to your tree inventory that you guys have done. so that we can make sure we have a good diversity of trees that we get planted back there, away from the view sheds.
Yep, that shrub layer, we can have that at variable height. And it's funny to think about that with shrubs without trimming them, but they usually only grow to a certain height. So within those view sheds, to reduce some of those weeds from growing, the shrub layers are kind of nice to have, so you can still see the river in those locations. And then having some designated paths down to the river where we're doing the improvements along the shoreline so that those are more easily accessible. So, but yeah, it's interesting to think about it that, you know, you wouldn't think you can tell nature how tall to grow, but if shrubs only go to a certain height, you know, and they're species that park staff is interested in utilizing in those areas that look a little more natural, that's what we'll go with within those sections. The last thing you want to have to do is do a lot of mowings with native prairie and have to manage that for the next 5 years for it to look decent.
Yeah, so I guess our next steps, from what I'm kind of hearing, is we can maybe bring this back once we know that grant program is going to be available again. We'll contact Jesse.
That was just me, so
No,
I
no,
want to
certainly.
give the rest of the group here the chance to talk. But I also, before that, I just want to say thanks to WSB for sticking your neck out, putting the legwork into this and that. So however, whatever, no matter what the outcome is.
Right. Appreciate that.
I do have, I guess I need clarification, because I know we did a project, or we were doing a project, not maybe with you guys, but someone who was using a machine that was like going to fall into the river because they couldn't go any further. We were talking about this at the last meeting where we thought it was going to be more cleared. Anyone else? Troy, remember this?
Through the ARPA project,
Yeah.
the tree clearing and stuff like that.
So that's different. Okay.
This is a
And
much bigger scope.
Okay, so you guys have the equipment, obviously this whole plan, to be able to like get in there deeper so we can actually see the river, because I know we were a little bit disappointed.
So we're just design engineers, so we design the plans that we would go out to bid with a contractor, and then the
Okay,
contractor
then
would
we
come
have to
out and
find-
perform that work according to our plans and
Okay.
specs. And I think the purpose of the riverbank restoration is not only restore the riverbank to, you know, provide more habitat and wildlife, but also to have those view sheds like you guys talked about. So make sure that those are open so that the public that is walking the trail can see the river
Yep.
at certain points along there. And then other points, it'll be not as dense as it is today. Once it's done, there'll be new plantings in there, new underbrush and things to try to keep the invasives down. So it'll look different. It won't be as dense as it is today, but it'll still be dense to some degree.
Yeah, okay. I just need to clarify where the two separations. But I would also say that I am in agreement with Kevin. I just don't feel comfortable spending the money, even though it's a grant at this time. And it's nice to hear that we do have another option to apply at a different time.
Andrew, if I may. So I think, and I hesitate to say this, but I think I'm the one that brought this forward to begin with, to remove brush down by Kiwanis and along the Mississippi. And, you know, time will tell if I will actually say I said that or not. But I think one thing, my wife and I were actually walking, we walked that whole stretch today, crossed under the bridge, up along Kiwanis, and, you know, that southern side of the bridge along the river is horrible. And looking at the Kiwanis side, you know, stuff's already coming up, and, you know, Jesse, I can tell it's unfinished, and so that was my main concern, and I brought that up as far as the river side on this new project. You know, is this just gonna come back up and look the same in 5 years? And if so, then it will not be money well spent. But, you know, and it kind of sounded like we were assured at the last meeting that, you know, that shouldn't be the case. I think one thing interesting would be to see how this comes out along the river this fall, and kind of gives us something to look at and say, is this something we want to continue with down the river? But I'll just say, you know, as just a community member walking along the trail, not being able to see the river, it sucks. I mean, it's
Well,
it's
we'll
right there,
definite-
and we can't enjoy it because there's just too much crap between us, and so,
We definitely need your guys' help, because this is gonna get cleared out and it's gonna look fairly bare through there. But as long as you could be telling the city and other public folks that it's going to look better once the vegetation establishes in there. Because it's going to look thin to begin with in comparison to what it is now.
I understand
Anytime
that.
remove all that buckthorn out of there, it's gonna clear it to the point that folks are gonna think you're just decimating everything that's good out in that area.
So it's definitely going to take some good PR because, like Luke is trying to say, when you first do it, it's going to be like, oh my gosh. But then once things get established in the springtime, it'll look a lot different.
Yeah, we'll definitely need your guys' help to promote instead of saying, we're having issues. So,
Yep.
that's when I'll say it was Jonathan's idea.
I just had a couple thoughts. I love the concept. I think having a river district from the new park all the way to Rotary, like that'd be amazing. I think when this comes back, two things that would be helpful, and I don't know if this is possible, but like kind of a rough estimate of the view shed areas. And what I liked on the map you had, Luke, was kind of the intensity of maintenance required. Like, hey, this has a ton of buckthorn. We think it's going to be a nightmare to maintain versus, hey, this seems relatively fine. Just to get a sense of the maintenance costs, I think that is certainly something front of mind for us at the moment.
Right.
And then if you and Jesse can talk and say, hey, of the $50,000, we think staff time could cover this percentage, that would be a better place for us to start than
Yeah.
somewhere between $0 and $50,000.
Yeah, we can certainly start looking at staff loaded rates and things to see, what level of effort you guys feel and Jesse feels would be adequate to cover. And then maybe if you guys do want to apply for something, maybe it's that combination of, cash and in-kind to help, take some of the load off city staff and the in-kind stuff. And I totally understand the grantitis stuff. I think in my position when I was here, it was, one of those things that you got to be careful what you apply for. And so I definitely understand that. So yeah, we'll bring this back, Luke, when maybe next year when the park board sees a finished product for the first time of this type of work, and then maybe that'll give you a better sense of what it'll look like afterwards, so you don't make a commitment you're going to regret. So
no, that's fine. The biggest thing was to just be able to bring the opportunity to you guys so you understood that projects between 50 to 500,000 fall within this category of natural resource funding. So anything that's above 500,000, then you're going after LCCMR or LSOHC funds. There's also another category with Conservation Partners Legacy Funds for projects that are expedited from $5,000 to $50,000. So if you have shovel-ready parks projects, there's 6 grant cycles during a year for that expedited funds for smaller projects like that. So that's the advantage of these CPL funds. They allow you to apply for shovel-ready projects that you basically have them bid out, they're ready to go. You just need to go get the work done, and others that take a bit more planning into them.
Cool. Troy.
I just have one more question. So, just a scenario. What if we did this next year and we were awarded a grant of 500,000 and the project that we took on, maybe we only used half of that? Can you return the other and not have in those services? You know what I'm saying? If you don't use it, can you return it?
Yeah, so your percentage isn't as high?
Right, yep.
Number one, I would say you had a crappy estimator if they were that far apart between 250 and 500,000. But yes,
seen
no, you're exactly right. That 10% could be 25 grand instead of, the 50 required for the match.
Okay, thank you.
all right, thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Luke.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
It
Luke.
was great talking with you again.
All right, next up we have discussion on the 2024 budget. Jesse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we put this agenda item in here really to address any comments that would have been received at last night's meeting. It sounds like all 5 of you were present and heard the presentation that Andrew put together, as well as some of the comments that were received. So really looking for some discussion regarding that. If the park board wants to make any adjustments or anything like that, this would be a good spot to do that. But really opening it up for discussion in response to yesterday's meeting.
Perfect.
Oh, and if I can add, I did include the operating and capital budgets that were included in the council packet as well, so that way you have that for reference.
Excellent. I think, right, there weren't really any comments about the operating budget, so focus on the capital probably. For a couple tweaks, I think from our meeting on Tuesday. So we had talked about, well, first of all, I was using the wrong spreadsheet during our discussion. I'd been trying to like estimate where things go, and so when I total everything up, I was on the wrong spreadsheet. So the 2% is actually 399 something.
400-ish.
Yeah. So I would propose that change, and then I think it'd be good to have a discussion about some of the annual programs, right? Things like the picnic tables, grills, trash cans. I don't think we included trash cans in our inventory, but picnic tables and grilling stations we did. So do we want to just fund those in the same way, or have a separate line item to say, hey, we're replacing these, we may want to pull them out of then the capital item spreadsheet. So maybe we'll start with that discussion. Not everybody all at once, though.
Well, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
I think you did an amazing job. So you want us to go, are we going line by line here, but like skipping the lifter, or, and then did you say 399 instead of 510? Is that what you were saying? The number you had wrong?
Yes, yeah, let's start there then. Yeah, so I was in a different sheet I'd made for our discussion. Yeah, so if someone were willing to make a motion, I would say that should be 400 and not 510.
So that 510 would have been 399. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I had been, for our discussion, I had pulled in things ahead from like, right, the kind of the proposed list we had. And so when I totaled things up, it included those things that were pulled ahead. So it's sort of double counting. Like the pavilions are in there twice, essentially.
So from what I heard last night was that we needed to speak to what we were spending that 400,000 on, and maybe it wasn't supported, that we would just have a little fund. Is that what you guys heard?
Yes, so we need to stipulate. Gabe Johnson is here, so
I
we
know,
need
I'm
to stipulate
oversensitive.
what we want that money to be allocated to, right? And
That's one person?
President, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Troy.
I would just kind of talk a little bit before the meeting, and just looking at what we have, looking at all the work that we've done in our assets, and trying to say, you know, if we want to keep maintaining this, because to me, it's kind of been, the city council wants us to be looking ahead and looking at, you know, money that needs to be spent, not just in the, you know, at the last minute, and which is what we've been trying to do. And maybe we took one step too far, I don't know. But to me, the feeling that I have is, I don't think we should be adding anything to our parks that's got maintenance tied to it for a while, because we don't know what we're gonna get for funds to be able to maintain that. And so I think we just need to go through that list and look and say, what do we know for sure that is gonna fail soon, that, or that, you know what I'm saying? We created that list. And maybe that's what we need to go back to and say, well, what do we need? What do we need for this year that has to be, that we should really be looking at? Instead of saying, let's add concrete pad to the new hockey rink in J.C.'s. Let's go through that list and see if there's other stuff, we talked about changing the parking lot around, the looks of J.C.'s park or other parks and look at that and say, what do we want to do? I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but I have a bad taste in my mouth about wanting to do anything new. We've done the Lyman P. Park, we've done Memorial Park, which we're still trying to fix or finish. We have Lum Park coming up with the new beach and different things we want to do there. That has some campground items that we can add that could increase our funding. One area that, parks are typically not money raisers, so, that's one area that we know that we do pull some money in, but I think we gotta look at some of our parks and say, what do we need to do most urgently? Without spending a bunch of money on something new.
Yes, for sure. I think one of the challenges with this is the spreadsheet doesn't, well, let me start here. I talked with Connie briefly yesterday about, okay, we request kind of money to maintain all the different items. Is there a way we can track, right, okay, here's money for the splash pad, here's money for the Miracle Field. And there isn't really an accounting process, it sounds like, to say, here's the money we've set aside for that. So I think it's on us then to be able to represent, hey, we asked you for this money. This is, right, what we've saved for the Miracle Field, for the splash pad, for the grill, for the scoreboard, right, everything on the list. And I think, right, trying to print spreadsheets into packets is not doing a good job. And I wonder if there's another tool or something we can use to communicate that, right, hey, if, right, we proceed in this way, this is what money would be reserved to maintain or replace these items. Right, that should be publicly available. If somebody wants to say, hey, this playground's run down, when are you replacing it? Go to the park's website and you see, right, when it's on the list. So I wonder if that would help address some of those concerns. But Gabe, I know you're here too. Do you want to? Yeah.
Gabe Johnson, 1501 Rosewood Street. So I just met with the council president and the finance director and the city administrator to go over our preliminary budget. And we think the bottom line number there, 747.5, is absolutely doable for 2024 for the Parks Department. But like I said last night, we're not comfortable handing over $510,000 and hoping you do well with it over the next 30 years or whatever. But we kind of identified two possible solutions or routes you guys could take. One is you could go identify the most critical needs and $510,000 of them and push them into 2024. But if you'd rather save money, we have in our capital spreadsheet, I don't know if any of you have seen this, and it really doesn't matter, but like we have a line down here that is for the water tower. We set aside $300,000 one year for the water tower. It's not the water tower committee's money. They don't get to make any decisions on it, but they come to the city council when they have an idea and say, here we have this grant match, can we use some of the water tower money for this? We've said yes almost every time, but I don't think we've said yes every single time. So we could do that with the Parks Department, have a $510,000 set aside, but it would require the park board coming to the city council with an identifiable project off of your capital plan. Say, this is the year we want to do this. We've set aside X amount of dollars. Can we fund this project this year? So that's basically the two options we have now. Can't be a blank check, good luck, do good work, but two possible solutions. That's where we're at. But 747 looks good for this year. I'm going to start looking at future years. I don't know what we have in parks in 2025, but it looks like whatever we have for you there that's about what you're going to get. I don't know if that's 300,000 or 700,000 or what it is, but I can look in future years. But 2024, 747 is a good number. You let us know what you want to do with the 510. If you want to identify projects, or if you want to just create a little set aside down here that isn't exactly your money and we could spend it on whatever we want at any given time, but we haven't done that to the water tower yet. We've set that money aside and given it to them when we agree with their requests. But that's where we're at with the budget process. So,
Thank you for the update. I'll go first. I don't know.
I'm sure, I'm ready to.
Oh,
whatever.
go for it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So very much appreciate it, Mr. Johnson. It's good feedback. So, and Mr. Bedeau, also at our last meeting, you alluded to, as I think you did responsibly, that this is kind of the mindset that we should probably have moving forward. The second version that you brought forward is kind of a fascinating approach, because then it does basically, it's kind of the mechanism of which we could use, as well as the city could use, to be having a forward-thinking mindset of we know larger bills are coming. The way how we created the set amount every year was kind of driven from council, we're hearing from the council that they like a steady number all of the time. And that only works if you can somehow manage to move all of the parts and pieces of $1 million purchases and $30,000 pieces and somehow get them all strategized so they're all wearing out at just the perfect time and do that. We know that we probably can't do that. So some version of setting aside money ahead is one way to do it, which kind of embraces this system. The other way is you go 1 year and you don't take anything, but then 2 years down the road, boom, we hit you for 1.5 million. That's not good. We don't want that either. So it seems to me that some version of the second that you brought up, Mr. Johnson, kind of seems to make sense. I will also say that I have some hesitancy with that because the one potential snag to that is that once we're all gone and there is no longer potentially a park board that has that same mindset of sets money ahead for 5 years down the road, some new park board could come in here and be like, oh, well, there's $1.3 million sitting in the park maintenance fund or whatever we're going to name it. We decide we're going to build a new park wherever. So I think there's some risk in that, but I think we've all done good work, and if we could fashion some version of what you mentioned, Mr. Johnson, that sounds to be kind of a happy medium between the two, and leaves ultimate control to city councils, which is what we want also.
Yeah, so a way that could potentially work is you could work down your list as you've got listed here. You know, you've got your items, you've got dollar amounts associated with that. You could work your way down the list, and as you get to the items that hit the $600,000 mark, much like the water tower, what it was 3 years of 100,000, was it? I think is how we got there. So for 3 years, we set aside 100,000, knowing that after 3 years, we were going to start taking money out of that account. You could take it from a similar approach so that you're not necessarily reaching 20 years into the future. But if you got $1 million purchase, you've definitely got a way how that's going to work. I do think that, like you said, that the issue with it is that if it's just a fund sitting there and the park board has access to it, there's nothing that holds you to any accountability as to what you're spending it on, because you're just essentially saying you have the right to spend the money is there. And that would be the fear from the council is, let's make sure we have a pretty decent idea of what's going to happen with this. And you are absolutely correct, Kevin. The board here can do as the board does, but future boards don't need to act within the same mindset. And a checks and balance system is the safest approach for that.
Yeah, I love that second concept. I think our goal as a board is we want to stop surprising you with, I'm going to bring up the lights again, right? It was just awful for everybody. We want to stop surprising you. And we also want to be able to justify that we can maintain stuff that we have and stuff that we add. If we do the stream bank stuff, we got to look at that and say, oh, it's $30,000 in staff time and materials, right? And that's operating, whatever. Is that really going to fit with everything else we have to maintain? So I like the check and balance. I think it helps us collaborate with you more and be more aligned on the priorities.
Who gets to name the fund?
Oh, Jesse.
So maybe just looking for a little clarification, especially moving forward. As we're going through this process and we put together a capital plan that gets presented to the city council. Let's take the example of $400,000 in the set-aside maintenance fund. When this gets presented, do you maybe put together a similar spreadsheet like this that says, here's our capital ask of these 7 items or whatever, totaling X amount of dollars, and then we'd also like to execute this other project using those set-aside maintenance funds for X amount. And each year, that's how those funds are allocated, and it all goes through council for approval. It's part of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're actually way farther along than we think we are because we basically have all of our capital assets listed. We know roughly what they're going to cost to replace and roughly when it needs to be done. So with not really that much more work, we can begin working those numbers backwards, assuming that our baseline is $750 a year or $650, whatever. And then we can kind of strategize and start moving the pieces, so to speak, into place, knowing that some of them we need to save up for, some of them we can do in the short term, and some of them are kind of in the middle. Maybe instead of like a 30-year plan, having the 30-year vision, but really focusing on a 10-year scope of work to realize to do the best we can do with $750 a year over the next 10 years, knowing our total, or whatever, right? So we're almost right there. We have basically all of the information to do that, so.
Yeah, even narrowing it down to a 5-year, having a better vision of 5 years, because to me, what we've done in the last 2 years, especially in the last year, we went through every park and what we did with the assets, what we did with what's in our parks, what do we want in our parks, what needs to be done in our parks. We spent so much time on that in the last 2 years plus that we're probably to the point where now we can sit back and look at that plan and we can pull up that plan of 190 items. I think we can put it in maybe a different format and start spending some of our time, if we're gonna meet every 2 weeks, on, I don't know that we'll ever get back to meeting once a month, and being done in 45 minutes, so, and half of that was just chit chat, but to the point where we can actually start putting some teeth to the work that we've been doing and recognizing and collaborating with staff and the city council and saying, we have these beautiful things, let's manage them well and do a good service for our community. And, I think that's what all the hard work has been done, has been put forth for in the last 2.5 years, is for that vision in mind, to have that goal in mind, to be able to really do a good job as a park board on what we're offering our community and our parks. So, I think the second option that you presented, Mr. Johnson, is, I think would work really well, especially with the work that we put in over the last couple of years in trying to figure this all out, because it's been tough to look at and try to get our hands wrapped around it. And I'll say kudos to all of our other board members and all the work that everyone's been willing to do, on their own time and effort. So I like the sound of it. I think it's a great option moving forward.
Dave? The one thing I do want to just highlight as well is that just make sure we're catching the part where there are potential times when the park board is going to need to take less, because we're going to have to look at the organization as a whole. Fire department needs a fire truck. Okay, that year we're going to need to take less. However, in doing this, we should be able to better set ourselves up for that as well, because we can already look out and see what the other departments are. And the organization as a whole needs to hold every department to the same standard, in that you need to be pretty consistent in what you're doing so that the park board doesn't need to have surprises saying, oh, hey, by the way, when you thought in 2027 you were going to have a lull, that's actually 2024. So we just need to make sure we're being consistent, and as long as we're of that understanding, the work you've done here is fantastic. And now it's just going to be a matter of identifying the projects, making sure they're projects we can get done, and then keeping an eye, because what is it? The first one I see on here, you've got a $300,000 in 2027, but very quickly we jump into some of those 600,000 ones by 2028, we're looking at 100,000, 600,000, 100,000. Those are the ones we got to be mindful of. So, and we've got a few years to get to those.
Yeah, so we're setting aside money now for those, so it's cool, it's awesome.
John?
If I may, when we're looking at the capital budget in future years, all this stuff will be taken out of that fund. So, I mean, we're looking at the bottom half of this, what, $100,000 in demo and restoration in this year's budget that will already be pre-planned for and taken out of these future funds. So the ask in the future should at least be less and a little more flexible, so.
I'll just add, I would love to get to a point too where we can, when we have these budget presentations, we can say, here's, right, what we need to maintain what we have, and also here's a menu of things that we could add, right? I think one takeaway I had from the joint meeting is that we neglect parks in certain districts, like Bain hasn't had anything done in a long time. So we can say,
Not Bain.
JC's.
Bain is a darling of our park system.
very recently then, okay, bad example, right? We can put berms into Bain, and it's gonna be this much in maintenance and this much to execute, and let you, as a council, pick and say, hey, we have extra money or we don't, right, it's a leaner year, but here's some options we have on top of maintenance. And just be able to really be clear about what we're doing, and, you know, eventually we're gonna build new stuff again, so we can be prepared for that. Yeah, this is super exciting.
I just have one thing. So Gabe, thank you to you and your committee that you met with today for coming back to us with another option. I just think everyone said that too, but I just appreciate bringing back something that was something we could see, like, and you saw our hard work, because it's kind of a bummer last night. It was like, so thank you for coming back.
Oh, Dave.
What would you like to see from?
That's what I was just gonna ask. I didn't want to make him get up again, but I was gonna.
Oh, that's fine. I was planning on just doing option 2 and putting 510 down here. And if you guys want it to be 400 and find a $110,000 project or whatever, just let us know. Let us know by December. It looks, I mean, the preliminary budget doesn't look good right now, but the capital side of it all does. It's more of an operations problem we have, so we'll have to figure that out. But, so you just let us know, and the 747 is gonna work. If you want it to go 510 down here, we can put that in the budget, or if you do find a project or something you do want to slip into 2024.
We can come back with less, but not more in December, so.
Yeah, just get it, yeah, let us know anything final by December, and that's what we'll have in the final budget. And then finally, I guess unrelated to this specifically, is we still have like $70,000 in ARPA funds that we got to spend, so if you guys have any ideas for that, looking to get rid of it.
The river south of
Stream
Kiwanis?
bank restoration.
Yeah, love river.
Well,
yeah,
that thing just
stream
clear cut the
restoration.
Little Falls. Just keep going.
Thank you.
I mean, even if there's stuff that we can take out that's gonna just permanently be gone, that would be ideal, but one other thing I have is, Jesse, and I think I mentioned this not too long ago, we've added a lot of stuff recently, and I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth, but one of my concerns is, do we have enough staff to maintain what we're adding? And, because I haven't heard anything about, we need another staff member to do what we have, or not. I'm not trying to, it's just as we add stuff and we add stuff and we add stuff, you know, are these guys just getting more efficient at their jobs, or have we bought super good equipment that they can get things done quicker, or?
It's more of a level of service question. So I can tell you our staff doesn't have free time waiting for new tasks to come up. They're busy working on all of our parks at any one time. Even when we plug in special projects like having to remove the Buster gazebo and having to be able to pull that off before the new one comes in when we order it. To your point, adding new things. So we just added Lyman P. White Park, the new splash pad, and all the improvements at Memorial. All those things add more tasks to maintenance, but we haven't added more hours to complete those tasks. So to complete that maintenance, that means we just can't spend as often elsewhere. So where we would be able to spend, 4 hours on this task before, well, we need to pull those some hours to accommodate those new facilities. So instead of 4 hours on this task, now we really only have 3 hours to accommodate it. So ultimately, the level of service everywhere starts to drop when you add more things. Otherwise, you do have to find more efficiencies or more staff to accommodate that. So that's the challenge, and I know Troy's expressed that, especially with some of the challenges with trying to be efficient in Gregory while trying to not be in there as much as possible, but at the same time, trying to be efficient through all of our parks and do that. So it is a constant challenge for them to try and get all of those different things done in a timely manner. But the more you add, the challenging it is.
Okay, thank you. The reason I wanted to bring that up is because I think it's just something we have to keep in mind when we're looking at getting a grant and doing something that's going to cost more service hours, more labor hours to maintain well.
All right. Do we want to, I don't think we need a special meeting in September. Do we want to bring some ideas back at our regular September meeting? I know there was, go ahead, Jesse.
I was just going to add to that. So I wasn't going to do it until later in the staff report. But one piece is the 60% plans for that stream bank restoration. I got them late last week. I didn't have enough time to really vet them and get them on this agenda. So I was going to ask if the park board would be willing to establish a special meeting to at least go through those 60% plans and keep them on the timeline to get them bid this fall. So if that would be something that would also be part of consideration.
Fair. I think my opinion would be to limit that meeting just to that then. I think I don't want to burn us all out.
Well, we can say that. We'll at least try.
Yeah, that's true. It's probably, yeah, do we want to, yeah, let's just look at dates. So like the 12th is our traditional timing. I would say the 5th or the 19th are also options. Well, the 5th is the day after Labor Day. I'm going to guess that's City Council. Strong point. That's off the table. 12th or 19th, or other dates too, but let's start there.
I'm good on the 12th.
That's a Tuesday?
Yes.
I'd rather do the 12th, so we have a week in between.
Fair.
Yeah, I could do the 12th.
Excellent. I guess we'll just adjourn to that at the end, but does the 12th work for you, Jesse?
I think you're far enough out, we don't have to, but yeah.
Good point. Excellent. Okay. I do think we can bring the budget back to our regular September meeting, though, and not
19th.
cram too
Or
much in.
26th? 26th, yep.
Yeah. So,
You want us to have ideas of what we want to have under the 400,000? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, so I'd have, I think, two questions for us to think about. One would be, we have some of these annual programs. Do we want them at this flat amount, or do a number of these are also in the capital items? Grills, benches, picnic tables specifically. So, and signs, actually. Do we want them kind of in these individual line items, saying of $500 for a grill, we're going to save 2% a year? Or is that silly and we just say, here's the money we have for grills, let's divide it among the parks that need it? So that'd be question one. Question two, the 400,000 for the 2%, do we either want to fund more for individual items and maintenance, or are there other things that we cut out last week that make sense to pull forward in the vein of, let's fix it now, get caught up sooner? So those would be the two things to think about. Cool. Next item, equally exciting, discussion on parking vehicles at Gregory Park. Thanks, Gabe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the agenda item, I did include a few things. So first, I put some of the measures that staff does to inform the public of our policy of no vehicles in the park. We do have a few different, I'll call it hurdles, that we make them at least somewhat aware. However, it doesn't obviously force compliance and anybody that uses those facilities without a reservation may not necessarily be aware of those things if they don't research them. So some of the things to continue to look into and some things for the park board to address would be if we want to revise the reservation application, maybe specifying an actual question. Are you expecting to have vehicles in the park? Are you requesting an exemption to the policy to allow a vehicle or whatever for the event? Putting in their recommendations that they just apply for a separate street closure application that, like any other street event, our public works maintenance closes off a block of roadway with our traffic control materials to accommodate for vehicles for an event. Recommending they utilize other parks with parking lots for those events that if they need it. Do we establish a deposit in the fee schedule for events that they're requesting vehicles in the park for, or that exemption? Do we put conditions on those approvals, such as if they want to have a fire truck for a national night out? Do we tell them you are allowed under the conditions that the fire truck enters the park from this direction and parked in this location? Those kind of conditions. Another piece that I had a conversation with their police chief, Chief Davis. Currently, the policy is not listed in our city code. This unfortunately leaves our ability to enforce that policy quite constrained from a staff perspective. PD can't enforce the policy and neither can staff. We really don't have any teeth to really remove somebody from the park. If the park board wishes, we can bring a proposed ordinance to the city council to include a restriction of parking within Gregory Park with vehicles. And then that would be, if it's in the city code, something that we could enforce with our PD. And the police chief did mention that if it was in the city code, he would be able to enforce that. But that would be an option that we could do, and we could bring that to the city council for the recommendation. But yeah, just looking for direction on some of those pieces.
Thanks, Jesse. Question?
Yeah,
Oh,
just super
Dave.
fast. It is in the city code. The city actually requires parking pads for any parking. We constantly are having complaint issues about people parking on their own grass in their yards. It's in the city code, so we'll just pull up what item that is and make sure that we're aware of that. If we need to change some of the wording on that to say that grass also includes park grass, we'll go ahead and do that. But the city code does specifically say that you are not allowed to park on the grass, so.
Oh. Other questions for Jesse? Troy?
I would just go back to the beginning of the meeting when we were talking about no vehicles in Gregory Park. And the last thing I want to do is hamstring our staff in their work. And so if that poses a problem for them to do their work effectively, then I would request that we relook at that motion. So I guess this is directed at you, Jesse. Does, what does that do to your staff and their ability to effectively do what they have to do in Gregory Park if we say staff cannot drive into Gregory Park?
It will make maintaining that park a little bit more of an expense from time as well as efficiency, and then throughout the system, obviously having to spend more time at that park without losing the level of service at that park. We have to take those hours from somewhere else. There's also the potential for, like I said, moving picnic tables and stuff like that. But to your point, this special use, I guess, exemption, it's difficult because things come up pretty regularly of moving picnic tables and the satellites and having to move them around. The trees in the park that we plant for memorial trees. We're in there on a regular basis. To be able to, or having to come back and forth to the park board for each of those instances would be difficult. But if we're granted an exemption, it's very tough. I understand the whole daily piece, but again, that's also part of our maintenance throughout the entire park system. When we do drive through all of the parks to maintain them in some form or fashion, but yeah, that would cause us more time.
And I think, Kevin, I don't want to speak for you, but I think on your part, you witnessed some staff operating perhaps not in a great manner while they were in the park doing their job. Is that what kind of led for you to?
No, I wouldn't
not
say
want
not
them to
operating
be-
in a great manner. So I can kind of go through that when I jump in here a little bit,
Okay.
Troy, but whenever my turn comes up.
Are there any other questions before Jesse, before we get into discussion? Kevin.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so here we go. So as many of you know, this has been kind of a hot topic for me for quite some time. I live over there. Gregory Park is the one park that I notice that we have issues with cars pulling into other parks, but Gregory is the one where it is not every day, but virtually, a lot. Last Saturday, there was cars inside down parked by the pavilion. I've seen cars pull in, sitting on the pavers, so forth. This is just the public that's there a lot. Most of them don't know that it's on our rental agreement, or a lot of them didn't even have a lease. They just drove right in there, okay? I personally just don't like the mindset of cars in our parks. I also don't like the mindset of fire trucks in there or food wagons and that. I just believe fundamentally that we have either other locations that are a better fit for that type of use, or like is suggested here, you just close the street for one day, you have your thing, you do your food trucks, and you roll on. The issue that I have is just the continual damage to the park surface, growing the grass, cutting the mud, dragging the mud on top of the tennis courts, breaking the concrete. Go over there and look at it, guys. There's a ton of damage over there from this exact same activity. So I just think there's a better way. And now, the difficult part of this is that we've got a staff and a use that has been established over there for like 25 years of kind of the same thing. But I would encourage every single one of you to take a 3-minute drive over to all of the parks at Baxter and see what they do. They put boulders all the way around the entire perimeter of their park. There is not one vehicle, and I talked to him about this, there is not one vehicle ever allowed inside the parks on top of their grass. They empty their trash, they do their building maintenance, they do their softball maintenance, all with gators with soft-tired equipment or on their little paths that they have there. I would be totally happy with that. I think that it's just, we have to get past a mindset of we have to drive in there. We have to go in there to empty trash. If people want to move picnic tables, they can pick them up and move them themselves, and they got to put them back. We don't have to go in there with a trailer and a tractor and a truck and drive around picnic tables and that kind of things. We're one of the few parks that just has picnic tables floating around. Most parks have them bolted down on pads, that kind of thing. So there's a mindset here of just how we've always done things that we're kind of battling against, in my personal opinion. I will 100% grant that it is easier to drive into the park with a pickup, use the equipment, hook it onto the trash can, dump it in, and then drive out. Easier should not be confused with impossible. Okay, so difficult has now become the new impossible word. Yeah, I get it. It's more inconvenient to have to walk in, wheel the trash cans out to the edge and do it. But we do it at other parks and don't even think twice about it. We do it at Kiwanis. We get out of our trucks, drive down, pull up the trash cans, empty them that way. So in my opinion, there's a really easy way to handle this that will take some learning by staff. I would challenge the statement that it's more work, because I also know that the staff is over there patching up the grass, putting it back together, cleaning the sidewalks, blowing the dirt off the sidewalks. So there's hours in that also that are going to come back to us. All right. So my personal opinion is the easy way to do this is we just simply embrace a policy that says, look, no car traffic is allowed on top or into our parks. If you have an event and you want to have bigger trucks, you do it out on the street. It's that simple. This applies to the public, our staff, and then the police. police, almost every single night, drive right into Gregory, park next to the pavilion, lock the doors, or sit there for a while, and then drive back out. So it's just a systemic thing that either we are going to say, look, we're not gonna have this, or quite frankly, I'm ready to just give up and pave a road into there and put a parking lot where the ice skating rink is. I'm really at that point, literally, because I've invested way too much time, effort, and brain power into the alternative. That's it. That's my piece.
I'll go. I agree with your vision, Kevin. I think that is what I would love to see in the park, and they're just about every day. I think my concern is that I would like to see a process to get us there. Hearing, right, that staff is stretched to the limit. I think that's something we have to evaluate as a board. And I think there's maybe a way to ease into, right, we need to get the general public out of parking there. We need the fire trucks to be out of there. And then let's work on a plan to raise headcount or develop new processes and procedures over the winter so that next spring we can have a fresh start and we're not driving in there. So that's my only concern is I think adding burden when we've had a weird weather summer and we need staff to get grass growing, right? Even Lime Tree White's still in rough shape, like miss the contractor, but whatever. Just that's created some additional work, and I agree with you that I would like to see no cars in there. I think it's safer for people, right? You want your kids to run around the park. You're not looking for a pickup with a garbage can in the back. So long term, totally on board. Short term, I think I'd like to focus on keeping the public out with more measures than we've attempted so far, because those are still not doing it. So
Bring in the spikes.
that's right. You do like the rental car lots. Those are just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to be both ways, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's maybe a liability.
If I may.
Troy, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin 100%. And you said, Alex, they use gators, they use different vehicles, which now are 510,000, that's 650. But, yeah, but seriously, and maybe that's an issue, is that we just look at our equipment. For instance, we're talking about this lift for this new lift. Is that if we change equipment over time to keep vehicles out of the parks, then that means we need different equipment, because last thing I want to do is make their job harder, especially knowing that we're adding work on a yearly basis. And so I agree with you, Andrew, that maybe we look and work at this with staff and say, how do we get to this point? But at this point, I don't want to hinder what they're trying to do. I don't see Gregory Park every day like some of you do. I go to the less troublesome parks than you guys do, but I think it would be good discussion moving forward.
If we had a policy by spring, I'd be over the moon to have all vehicles out of the park. The trash can lifter may actually make this worse, because now we're gonna be putting a mechanism on the back of a truck that we're paying 30 grand for, that literally all they have to do is back up to a trash can, it reaches out, grabs it, and dumps it in.
Yeah,
This may make it worse, guys.
that's what I'm saying. Maybe that's something we need to look at.
We do already have one.
I know, but what I'm saying is now we're getting a new one.
Sure.
Or another one. I don't know if we're keeping the old one, but it's kind of just a wrong mindset to me unless that trash can is on the road.
Is this something we'd want like a working group to look at? So we could work with Jesse and Troy over the winter to identify how we can get vehicles out of the park?
Are you asking me?
The board in general, if anyone is passionate about it.
Anyone with passion, maybe volunteer, yeah.
Is it only Gregory Park we're worried about here too? I know that's where we're starting, and then we'll see how it goes, but I feel like that's the one park. All the other parks you can drive easily, park and walk into. It's really is exclusive to this park. So are we buying that trash picker upper just for Gregory? No, okay.
No, no, no.
We do use it at all the parks, okay. Okay, I just have, so I think we need to educate, either way we do this. I agree still with our first motion that we talked about at the beginning, that there should be no vehicles in the park. I would consider, talking about the staff, but I think like, however we're gonna do that, we need to educate everybody about it. So we need to tell the staff, like, this is why we're doing this. We're not trying to ruin your life. We're just trying to, whatever, we're gonna, and then the same thing with our public. So I do like the idea of adding something on the reservation. Well, I think you have a statement there now that's like no vehicles are allowed. I guess we don't need to give them the option because we aren't gonna let them do it. But saying they have the option to do the street closure, I like that. So that we're educating them as another option versus just saying absolutely not. But again, why? So we need to just know, why are we doing this? Because we want to have beautiful parks or whatever. But that's my biggest thing, is like always explaining why to people instead of just like, this is why, or this is what we're doing. So I guess my opinion would be like, what do I have to say right now? Like no vehicles in the park, for the exception of our staff at this point, but moving towards eliminating that as well.
We're just talking about Gregory Park here, right?
Just Gregory at this point, yep.
Yes.
Well, since there was already a motion that no vehicles are in the park at this time, do we need to adjust, do we need to make a motion to amend that?
I think that would be good.
With the exception of staff.
Yes. Just to be clear about our intentions.
Oh,
think-
sorry, one more thing. What about the police? So the police are there in the evening because we asked them a few years ago to be there because we were having issues with whatever situation. Yep. And they locked the bathrooms?
I would love to see
Oh.
Kevin running across Gregory Park and do a citizen's arrest on that.
Well, I'm just wondering if we need, we can encourage our police.
Literally, I would volunteer to lock the park, and I'll walk the 40 feet from the road to the pavilion. I can do that. I will volunteer to do that, to eliminate one vehicle out of our park. And I will get it almost every single night, or I will allow.
I'm just wondering though if that police presence is helping to reduce vandalism. Maybe from the report, probably not, because it still seems like there's a lot of vandalism in Gregory. But I don't know. That's why I'm like, maybe do we say police and staff, and only police at night from 9:30 to 10? Like, I don't know. Maybe we're getting too technical here, but if that helps reduce vandalism, that's probably why they park in there, because like a presence versus like a police officer walking is not as scary to people. I don't know. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
I think it's just it's a learned thing. Everybody knows you drive in and park next to the pavilion in Gregory. Everyone knows that. Everyone that I say, oh, you're not supposed to park here. Oh, I've been driving in here for 25 years. That is the common response.
You think that gate will change that?
No, if anybody's been by Gregory and seen where we're potentially putting the gate, I can't see that it will make any difference whatsoever, because it's directly behind two big boulders. And they're still driving in right directly to the south on the sidewalk, or directly to the north around the two boulders, which will now be concealing the gate.
Jesse?
So two pieces, really quick, one with the gate. So we did drill the holes for that gate based on the location agreed upon at the last meeting. We haven't installed the gate if the park board wants to decide on a different one. My only concern is putting the gate across like a sidewalk or something like that would be, I would hesitate quite a bit from an accessibility standpoint. About putting gates across walk. I know your point about the boulders there, just trying to further encourage no use there, but if we want to move that gate, now would be the time before obviously the concrete gets installed in the post, into those post holes. The other piece to Mayor Bedeau's statement about the enforceability of parking within the park, we do have that, that people aren't able to park in grassed areas. I'd have to clarify if this is more of a zoning issue or if this is something that PD would be able to enforce. I mean, I know community development can send letters and citations in an instance where somebody parked on their private property with a vehicle. But I don't know if that would be really effective here, because usually people are only in there for an hour or two. So I'd have to clarify that with our police department on if they could enforce something like that. But again, back to that statement, is that something that the park board would like me to explore further is potential of police enforcement of that matter.
Well, we got to make sure that the police is on board with not driving in there first.
I think Mayor Bordeaux had a,
I was just going to say, we have a gate at Bain Park that currently allows us to gain access to the park and conveniently allows people to walk through it as well. So I think we have the capability and technology to make that possible.
so I haven't seen it, Kevin. Does the gate need to be moved somewhere
100%.
else?
Well, unless we want it there just as a decorative item.
Or do we, I mean, would bringing in more boulders help also?
Well, so here's the thing, the idea of the gate is that staff can open it and get in, but they're the only ones. And then the rest of the time, it keeps all the rest of the world out of there. The way it's currently drawn now, currently drilled now, there's no way it will possibly do that. So in order to get it so that it keeps cars out, it needs to be shifted to the south. And in which case, you need some version of a gate that still allows people to walk through. Maybe it's two-sided or something like that, or has an opening through it. But that will still allow people to walk through there on the sidewalk to the south. But right now, the way that it's drilled, it will do nothing. It's zero. It will not do one thing.
If you move it to the south and facilitate another boulder, would that allow people to walk through?
I think so, yes. I think you could do it in such a way that it kind of hinged out and hung out in the way. But again, now we're trying to fix the sidewalk, because originally the sidewalks was supposed to fix this. It turns out that's not fixing it. Now we're kind of going back to, okay, now we're going back to the gate, and now the sidewalk isn't really right, so. I'm just telling you what I see over there. The gate should not be put in the way it is right now.
So I think I'm not following where,
Okay, so if you can imagine, here, I'll show you right here. If you can imagine that right now we have, can everyone see? We have kind of a boulder right here and right here. We're putting the gate directly behind those two boulders, still leaving this pathway open to drive in and this way open to drive in. So the gate literally won't do anything. It's positioned right behind two boulders.
Well, what if we did this then?
Oh, gosh.
Hold this here.
Anything, this is where most people are driving in, is right here. Is right on
But
this.
if we put boulders closer to that sidewalk, and over to the road, here to there, have the gate here and boulders here, would that?
Think so.
do the job?
Jesse, is staff driving in
Can I have my chair?
this part of it? Are staff driving in this area of Gregory, or are they coming in from like the southwest corner?
They come in right here.
Yeah, generally, they're using the southwest corner now with the boulders where they're at. But if we needed to move that around, we can. But again, clarifying on where we'd want to go in there. If the gate gets moved to the entrance, we could easily make that if that was the preferred option.
I mean, if staff aren't using this part of the park at all, I'd say just
Move boulders everywhere.
put boulders so you can't fit a car in there anywhere.
That's fine.
And then
That's what I'm thinking.
like
Use a different
put
access.
no unauthorized vehicles sign at the southwest corner.
And it makes the gate the only entrance, right?
Yeah, then you wouldn't even need a gate. You just do solid boulders.
Yeah.
I can tell you staff is not exclusively using the southwest. I think they are sometimes, but I'm seeing staff still drive right down this road right here. Yep,
I think boulders would stop that.
100%.
I kind of like that. I mean, the gate is not as nice as a boulder. It's not a phrase I thought I would say this morning. But like, then we don't have to maintain a gate and have people unlock it or lock it. So staff know where they can drive in. Public seems to use that less.
I love it.
Because that's where people come in to like, for events, right? Because that brings you right to the gazebo or pavilion.
Right.
Okay. Moving gate to curb cut the new 8-foot wide curb cut, and then line the rest
I'm
with
going to make a
boulders,
motion. You ready?
correct?
I think we're talking about no gate at all.
And just boulders across the whole, and then
Boulders.
maintenance access through like the southwest corner or something. Some alternative.
I'll make a motion to remove the idea of the gate that's already half underway. Just scrap that idea, patch the holes, and then put boulders in such a way along the entire westerly gap between the two tennis courts that no vehicle can enter Gregory Park.
One really quick question, I was clarifying, thinking winter operations to kind of plow the trail that goes up to the warming house into the rink. Would we want to continue to use this area for that?
What do we use to plow sidewalks today? Is it a pickup or is it like something more narrow?
Like a sweeper.
It depends on the snow. Yeah, sweepers, one we use. If we need to use something bigger, we use a snow blower.
I mean, our thought with this change
Or a
is
plow.
people aren't going to park in the park for the ice rink anymore, right?
How do we,
We could move one boulder, I guess, if we're still clutching on to hanging in, parking in the park. We could move one boulder but right before we flood the rink or before it's frozen
that's
down.
what I was
And
gonna say, do we flood the rink with a fire truck?
No.
Or is there a fire hydrant in
Nope,
there?
we've flooded off the warming house.
Yeah, I guess my thought is cars aren't going in there in the winter now because we have nice sidewalks that we can keep clear. And then if you want to ice skate, you park and you walk to the rink.
I don't disagree with you. It's just everyone's used to parking in there, but I love that idea, Andrew.
What about staff though filling the ice rinks? Like they're gonna need to get in there quicker, otherwise they're gonna have to go through all of the snow that's already through the whole park. If they're, I don't know,
I
what
don't think they use
Southwest.
a truck in there for that. You think they use a Bobcat for the rink, don't they?
For clearing, yes, we use the sweeper for the rinks,
Bring that in the
And to
corners.
fill.
but
There's
we
water
use a
going in.
pickup truck probably for plowing the pathways.
Saving time and money right there. Look at that. Not plowing in there anymore. Look at that. We're racking up city hours.
Yeah, I
Oh,
like
he's saying
that a
they
lot.
do use the plow truck.
Yeah, I know. Now they don't have to plow it anymore. They won't have to plow that whole area. You can sweep
Is this
it.
the only area you plow, or do you plow all the sidewalks?
They sweep them all or plow them all.
We do clear the sidewalks. It's just, like I said, it's a matter of getting to the rink, and it's kind of one of those areas that we typically have done, but if, we'll use probably the south one as the access way for the rink.
So if we go with boulders, then we can always move a boulder. If we put a gate up and we don't use it, then we can't really as easily take a gate, plus it's money we wasted. And we have extra boulders, right? So we don't have to buy, so,
I'll pay for the boulders.
Boulders laying around?
I don't know, that's what Dave said. I don't know where they are. Were you messing with me?
Sorry, we removed the boulders from J.C.'s. That's where these boulders came from. I'm under the understanding that there are other boulders that we placed elsewhere.
So we did not place all the boulders out of JC's. The remaining ones are still at our shop.
Saving you money, Kevin.
Creative genius.
Yeah, but we'll need them back at J.C.'s when we redo that.
Got 70,000 from ARPA funds. Start buying boulders for J.C.'s.
We do have quite a pile over at Kiwanis as well.
I just have one remark, not on this, because do we actually have a motion? Is there a motion?
There is a motion,
Okay, so
yep.
maybe I'll wait till
I'm
after
not
that.
changing it. We'll deal with it when it comes back up this winter, but I'm not changing my original motion. Putting the boulders in.
I just have a comment on the application part of it. So let's wait till this motion is done, because this is specific to Gregory Park boulders right now.
I don't think we actually have a second, so I kind of let that get away.
I think I will
you
second.
I thought she did second it,
Oh,
yeah.
perfect, great.
Yep.
I just, because it was like.
I'll second that.
The motion was to not put in the gate.
Okay.
Fill in the holes that we got half dug, and then put in boulders in some fashion that will allow vehicles to no longer access into the inside of Gregory Park by driving in between the two tennis courts. That's it.
But we're still allowing staff to go.
Still allowing staff to drive, as he says, they drive in there from the south, from one of the corners, but this should dramatically cut down on people going in there. So
And they do,
Thank
just to
you for that
clarify, in the rink, they do clear some of that, especially with the heavier snow with the plow truck.
Okay.
We'll have to
Take
find a
that
way
when
to
it
get
comes
in there.
this winter.
But
We might have a different system by then, who knows? But
Great. All in favor of the Boulder motion, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. Thought you weren't going to vote on your own motion.
I know.
Oh, you should have recommended the gate be used at Triangle Park.
Dave has a,
Yeah, so I just had a request on the actual application part of things. We've had comments from people that have said, you know, in there it says that you're not allowed to park in there, however, it's not called out in a fashion that people are noticing. It would be convenient, especially as someone that does that and has these applications, if there was, you know, a check mark on there that says, are you looking for a, what would you even call it? I'm drawing a complete blank, but an exemption. That is exactly the word I'm looking for, and I appreciate you helping me out on that. I was never going to get there. An exemption to the in-park parking. And you don't have to call it out any further than that, but that way, because we do it with many other things, the alcohol or with the, you know, sound system, that sort of thing. There are other parts that then come to the park board. It would be nice if that's something that automatically allows people to know, once you check this, it's going to park board, you need their approval. Probably going to want to put yourself a little bit ahead of the game as well. And that way I think that, at least from a user standpoint, it's pretty hard to claim you did not see that that is the case. And then the park board has the ability to say yay or nay, is the other part of it as well. The park board then can make that decision.
I love that idea as well. I'd also love if someone fashioned a motion to that extent, if we're all nodding our heads.
a motion? Do you have were you able to glean enough from that to understand how to change the document, and maybe bring back the document for us just to review?
Yeah. No, and that's something that we had in there is that first bullet point under the alternatives is putting in there, are you requesting exemption to the policy? And just stating again that this is our policy, and outside of that, you will need to get park board approval. But the other side of that I had also heard was we wouldn't even offer the exemption. It was just, we'll offer you the alternative of street closure or other parks. So clarifying that part of it is, are we allowing for the potential for an exemption, or is that not an option, that it's your alternative is the street?
Do we have that on there?
No,
The option for closing streets?
not currently.
Maybe we
And
just
it's a different application. That one goes to the city council. So what we would do is we would indicate that here's your alternative, link to that application, and it would go to the city council.
I think I'd be fine with somebody asking for an exemption. Like if somebody comes up with some really novel thing, I don't know, like let's talk about it.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's going to be a pretty high bar to,
Yeah.
at this point for us to say yes, but if somebody comes up with something.
Agreed.
I just have something to add. So do we have any permits out there right now? I'm thinking of like the Great Pumpkin. I don't know if I'm assuming she gets a permit, but is that like the next big event where maybe there would, should do food trucks in there? Or, you know, are there any events right now that are on the books that have a permit that are allowing large vehicles in there?
Not that I'm aware of. I know Brittany was going to look into it for the ones that are previously reserved. Great Pumpkin is a city event, so we don't necessarily fill out an application and review that. We just operate that through our piece. If that's something the park board wants us to make clear that, you know, we're not going to do vehicles for the Great Pumpkin Festival, that'll be something we adjust for our event.
I don't like to micromanage. I don't know. Thank you.
Of Jesse's options, is there anything else we want to pursue?
Mr. Chair,
Jesse?
I just want to clarify, is the park board interested in exploring enforcement of that?
Yeah.
And I would go and find out what our avenues are in the current code, or if an ordinance would have to be brought, but looking for that clarification. Because like I said, right now, as far as the police has mentioned, that they don't have that avenue currently.
You have a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission here, a high-yielding member of the Planning and Zoning Commission here. It could be very easy to go right past that, go directly to Planning and Zoning, make sure it's either A is in there, B is corrected. From what I'm seeing in here, it should fit into that, but if we're under the impression that we can't enforce that based off of what that is, you know, we have a parking ordinance that calls out it is illegal to park any vehicle that is inoperable. And you could maybe make the argument that it is inoperable. I think there are things within our code that very clearly state that it's not what we're intending to have happen. I would send it to Planning and Zoning, let Planning and Zoning take it on. That quickens the process and moves us through.
I'll be happy to bring it forward. Put it on the next agenda. No problem.
So we'll, yeah, wait to see what comes back.
On the enforcement side, or the ordinance, the way it's written.
You realize Gregory Park is gonna just cause you a high level of stress for a long time.
Me and others, but.
Hey, just make
Hey,
it
everybody-
pickleball court.
Everybody has a war, man. Everyone has a war. Everyone has a war. Yep.
Lean into it.
It's crossed my mind.
All right, I think we're good on Gregory Park then. Let's see. Oh, that was E. Then we have F is the Ski Loons contract. Kevin, this was.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for adding this, and I know we're running long here, so I'm just going to run through this really quick. I don't know if any of you have seen the emails that transpired over the last weekend, but unfortunately, I'm very crestfallen to say that it seems as though we are again dealing with a breach of the general contract that is agreed upon between the Ski Loons and the neighbors. I took no less than several calls, several emails, and I'm just at a point where I'm really just very disappointed with especially the management of the Ski Loons. 2 years ago, I said that if the Ski Loons are no longer practicing or conducting their operations in Rice Lake, it will not be because of the park board or the city or the police department or the DNR or the neighbors or even the Ski Loons, but it will be directly caused by the leadership of the Loons just not simply recognizing the dynamics that are playing out between their use and the neighbors. So for that reason, I went ahead and pulled up the Ski Loons agreement. It actually runs for 1 year. They're supposed to be done with operations now. That precipitated a lot of these emails, that we still had some stuff going on there, but because of that, I would like to, and before I actually make the motion, I'd like to hear from everyone else, just to kind of get their feel and get your guys' perspective on this. But I would like to, and I probably will be making the motion today unless convinced otherwise, that we effective immediately terminate the agreement with the Ski Loons, including all the terms and conditions in there, and recommend that we give them 30 days to vacate the storage premises, remove the dock, and that we refund them the $1 that we pay them for the annual lease for every year, and then we revisit this perhaps when it comes back in the spring. But for now, especially given what I heard from I'm going to say deputy, but I'm not sure that's correct.
Sergeant.
From the sergeant that was here, whom I really appreciate, it seems like we are much more involved and culpable for the behavior on this lake than we ever thought that we were. Now, we could say that we were operating with blinders or just didn't know, but based on what he says, because we're allowing them egress through our parks, we actually are kind of a participant in the behavior. That's what I heard loud and clear. I also heard loud and clear that there are potential safety issues there. I want nothing more to do with this, and that's why I'll be making this motion unless convinced otherwise, and love to hear what anyone else has to say.
Go to Jesse first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would like to clarify to the park board, after the last park board meeting, one of the comments that I had heard was looking into where the conversation came up with about how the city cannot control the operations of water. So I did that research. Unfortunately, I also lost track of sending that follow-up message to Chris Dens, informing him of the change. And so they did not get that message that they weren't allowed on that. So that is my fault. I did not send that message to Chris Dens that they weren't allowed on the 19th. So I do apologize. That was my miss. But just to clarify, that's likely why that occurred on the 19th. Now, I did see some of those photos that were sent over, and obviously some of their operations are a little bit concerning of how close they were. And obviously that's something that we do permit or would prefer, and something that we would want to address with them further. But I did want to at least make sure I clarified that that was something that I had missed. I did not send that follow-up email to Chris Dens.
Thanks, Jesse.
Andrew?
John, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I did visit a practice. I actually even messaged Kevin that I was down there. And, you know, during that time, at least for the practice, I would say that the wake and things like that were, you know, mild, pretty consistent. I mean, honestly, I don't think the behavior during that particular practice was completely out of control. I as a resident, probably would be quite annoyed by the length and the consistency, and like they're just firing off the dock during these practices, you know, every minute, 2 minutes, going around. And, you know, again, the wake's pretty mild, but I mean, it's just constant. So, you know, again, during that particular practice, there wasn't really anything out of control. They stayed well within the yellow buoys and things like that, that kind of, I imagine, was more of a guideline to try to keep those wakes mild. But, you know, that particular instance, I didn't really have any issues. I observed almost the entirety of the practice, and there wasn't anything going on. I was down there with my wife. So not really, you know, in that particular instance, any troublemaking, besides, like I said, probably a mild disturbance with the consistency and the level of the wake. But, you know, the behavior in that particular instance wasn't too bad. But again, I haven't been particularly in sync with the email threads. But you know, that's just my observation. You know, again, I'm not there at every practice. I'm not there at every event. But, you know, my one experience was, you know, definitely a mild disturbance. But they conducted themselves pretty well during that particular practice. I don't know the exact data. Obviously, I could pull it up. But yeah, that was my one experience when I went out to observe a practice.
Right.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming, and it goes back from the concept of the ski loons working out of Lum Park. Again, a lot of great stuff going on for the kids. Unfortunately, as is the case in a lot of things, the adults tend to ruin that. And I think it was when the ski loons had a ton of people here at that one park board meeting, and I basically put it on them that, you know, you need to make sure that your leader is doing things according to our contract. But it has been a melu, or you know, they have broken contract many times, and especially at the end of the year where they have gone past their dates. And you know, just hearing some of the reports from the residents of rooster tailing their docks, and that's to me just a blatant disregard for the residents on the lake. And I'm tired of dealing with it. I mean, I would like to see Kevin go a step further and have them have their dock and ski lift removed ASAP immediately, because my fear is they will continue to have practices even after their season is supposed to be ended. But that's just me. I'm tired of dealing with it.
Yeah, and sorry.
Kara, do you have anything? And then
Okay. Yeah, and I like I said, I just wanted to make comments on what I observed. I mean, I'm totally with Kevin at this point. It's just gotten too egregious. You know, it's well beyond, a level of decency at this point. So yeah, I'm with Kevin on this one. I don't want to see this continue.
I think my only thought with this is Jesse's original email to Chris and then our comments at the meeting. I would just want to talk with Attorney Langle before we tell them we're terminating the contract in case, right? I don't want us to get dragged into like a legal fight when in practice they're pretty much done for the year and we can just, right, choose to renew or not renew, or I guess sign a new contract next year. That'd be my only thought, is it would have roughly the same impact, but potentially not expose us to additional work, because I think we're all kind of over the headache. Jesse?
I just want to quick clarify, so just re-reviewing their agreement, there is not a termination clause. There is a sunset, obviously, every year that we have to renew it, but there isn't a matter of being able to terminate the agreement for cause. Again, to your point about consulting the attorney, we would have to make the argument that there was a breach in the contract of they did this that violated this term of the agreement, and thus we would have to clarify with the attorney and make sure that we're covered in that way.
Dave?
I'm sorry, am I missing something? Did you inform them that they could have their practice?
Previously, yes.
After the park board said,
No, that was before the park board meeting.
okay, so hold on. When did we tell them that they could?
That was earlier in the summer when they requested the change.
When they requested the change?
Yep.
Hold on, we never told them that we could.
I'm very confused right now as
This
to.
wasn't this the special park board meeting that we had, and I was president, and you just said, do you want to make an announcement, a public announcement, saying that they're going to add this additional training, right? And then
Yes.
we all said, we don't actually support them adding the date, but you had only asked us if we wanted to make a public announcement, and we said no to that as well. But I think you had already given them permission to do it, right?
So that was the response to him when he first requested, was that administratively, we didn't have any issue with it. We don't have control over the lake, as was indicated in the agreement, is that we don't
But then you
control it.
didn't follow up with that. After putting on a park board agenda.
Correct.
You did
Yes,
not follow
that-
up with
That
the
was
park
where
board's
I
response.
missed that second email, correct.
Okay, that's concerning to me.
Well, can we at least send them an email to ask them to not continue any practices for the remainder of the year as per the contract
Correct.
they have signed?
I'd just like to, if I could, please, Mr. Chair, just read item 4D. This is the use restrictions. The ski loons of Lum Park and leased docks are limited to 4 nights a week. During the term of this agreement, Monday through Thursday, between hours of 6 and dusk, ski loons shall be considerate of the neighbors and be respectful of their riparian rights at all time. Items 4E goes on to say ski loons may have up to 4 show terms of the year of the agreement with the dates approved in advance by the park board. The ski loon shall endeavor to maintain a safe distance from private docks and other users' public waters. Private property owners shall be allowed adequate time to leave their docks, return to their docks, and to position their boats on their boat list before the ski loons make a pass. I think that these 2 items alone, we could easily say have been breached, irregardless of the date there.
That's a good point.
So I am going to go ahead and make the motion that we, as of today, we terminate the current ski loons agreement, which does have a sunset coming up in 2024, but we will terminate that as of today, and that we would also notify the ski loons that they have 30 days to remove the dock and remove the storage items from our area and reimburse them the $1 for the entire lease agreement that we had during this 2023-2024 season. And then we'll take it back up at the next time that they want to bring this forward. That's my motion.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
Dave?
And this is not necessarily about the contract itself, are you still, if they were to come back and say they were interested in shows, is that something that the park board would be interested in? If that is something that they said, we'd like to continue to do shows moving forward?
I can't speak for the rest of the park board, but I would say that any new ski loons activity going forward needs to be looked at hard as far as the impact and all of those things. So I see, let's just be done with this current contract. They're supposed to be done now anyways, guys. They're supposed to be done. Let's just be done with this contract right now. Let's wash our hands of this year's contract, and then we'll relook at it when something new is brought before us, or the ski loons want to make a new presentation and put a new potential contract for us going forward.
Perfect, I just think that's fair commentary to make sure that the public is aware of.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Bedell.
Kara?
I've always thought that the ski loons should go to all the other lakes. They shouldn't have all their practices. I voted against that this year, but I feel like making this abrupt when the contract is already over for the year. I think we still need to play nice in the sandbox. They're not. I mean, if Jesse's gonna let them know they can't practice anymore, right? We don't have any more practices on their schedule anyways, or they don't. So then when they come back to renegotiate, then that's when we can tell them no. Or why would we tell them no now, make them angry, badmouth us, I don't know, whatever. I mean, like, I think we still want to be nice so that if they do want to host these ski events in the parks, we can still have that as an option for our community.
Kara, if I may, I will tell you the impetus for me wanting to terminate the contract now was because the sergeant was here and told us that even though we can't control, or even though that we may not necessarily be able to control their behavior on the water, we are, because we executed a contract with them through our property, effectively a participant in what they do for activities on the lake. So my point of this is I don't know what they're going to do in the next 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, but I just want to make sure, because we have been told by somebody wearing a uniform, it says, just so you know, you guys are in bed with the ski loons. So the whole reason that I'm doing this is not to make an abrupt change, but also is mostly just to protect ourselves from whatever behavior may be going on in the next 4 to 6 weeks on that water. I feel very leery about us now being told, yeah, you are a participant on what happens in the water. We were told that 2 weeks ago, and that's got me very nervous. So that was the reason.
I guess my only comment on this is, do we still want to consult the city attorney before terminating the contract?
That's kind of my slant, just because, as Jesse said, there is no termination clause. So what does it look like for us to demonstrate that they've breached it? I think the photo that, was it Wayne sent? Right, where the skier, gosh, it looks like they're 5 feet away from a boat. That sure seems like it is not maintaining a safe distance from private docks and other uses of public waters. So given that, I don't know if I would support.
No, a contract is a contract. I don't think a contract even has to have a termination clause in it. If you have a contract and you're in breach of the contract can be terminated by either side, can it not?
I would think so. I would just want to make sure we're going about this in the right way, so that we're not getting ourselves into any kind of trouble before next year.
And I think that's the intent, right? Is just to make sure that we are acting in good faith and making sure we're terminating this contract before any responsibility falls on us. So, because I mean, if that sort of behavior is happening, we don't condone it and we don't want to be responsible. So.
Question. When do they normally come back to us again and renew this contract?
March.
It's not until the spring. So, I mean, this would also give them time to find a new venue, possibly.
Or to present a different contract, I would think. Jesse?
So the agreement currently has effective March 1st, so it's effective May 1st, but we always bring it before March 1st. So generally in the February meeting is when we bring it.
And just scanning through, I do agree with Kevin, right? There isn't anything that says they can't keep practicing. So even if their season is done, they could continue practicing. And now that we've heard there's unsafe operations, I do agree that, right, we don't really want to be facilitating that, given that we are associated and or responsible in ways we didn't understand until recently.
So it says you can still practice Monday through Friday from 6 to dusk or Monday through Thursday, right? That's what, okay.
Yes, and there's no dates on
Got it.
until
Yeah, that
Labor
makes
Day or
more
something.
sense, yeah.
So I don't think I support your exact motion, Kevin, but I support the general concept if we were to run it through Joe first.
But how long is that going to take? I mean, do we have to wait until our next meeting, because then that's a whole month.
Well, can we talk
Only till
about
our
it?
special meeting.
You can very easily make a motion contingent on approval from the attorney.
I'll add that amendment to my motion, that the original motion be contingent upon approval or risk assessment by a city attorney.
Second.
Approved? Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor of terminating the contract, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That is approved. I've got the wrong agenda pulled up now. We're going to open the public forum at 6:20 p.m., which is slightly better than last meeting, so good on us. Nobody online. Thank you, Brent. We're going to close the public forum at 6:20 p.m. Next up, we have staff reports. Jesse, you're all alone over there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll try and be brief because I know we're running pretty late. You have Katie's report in here. Pretty busy time for her. She's transitioning from summer sports to fall sports, as well as I know this is about the time she starts also ramping up her planning for the Great Pumpkin Festival as well. So she's going to be pretty busy for the next couple months. You also have the list of parks maintenance items. Obviously, they're very busy around this time too. I just wanted to highlight a few extra things on top of that. So the Kiwanis Park improvements project, that is complete. We're just going to wrap up a final payment. They've completed all their punch list items. Unfortunately, not too long after they completed that work, Kiwanis has gone through a few weeks of pretty severe stretches of vandalism. We've been working with our PD over the last couple weeks of trying to not only do some more checks down there, but they've also put in, I'll call it trail cameras to try and catch those violators, even moving it around to try and catch that. We have been unsuccessful so far, but we're going to continue to try and curb that because it has been a few weeks of this now. And unfortunately, Gregory Park was also a victim of some pretty severe vandalism over the last night, where the men's door and frame was severely damaged to the point where we can't use it. And I think the divider in the men's room was also damaged. So unfortunately, that men's room in Gregory Park will be inaccessible for a little while until we get those repairs done. Lyman P. White, the grass continues to have issues, not the sod, but the seeded areas that they did this spring, mostly to the south and the west. Even with daily watering with the sprinklers, they just aren't able to take, the ground is incredibly hard, even with the daily watering. So unfortunately, we're going to have to come back and have that contractor do some corrections. Also, the trees are having some issues out there too. We have several that just aren't going to make it. We're going to be working with them to get replacements out there with the new park there. So a couple things that we're working with WSB on to make sure that we get addressed this fall when maybe weather is a little bit more favorable. And then finally, the Lum Park boat launch. If you haven't seen the post, the DNR is doing work over there that we were hoping was going to happen in spring, but it didn't get really kicked off until recently. They're replacing all the planking in the boat launch. Their intention is that work is going to take through mid next week to get completed. But our staff is assisting them with traffic control. We put signage out there to try and keep the boat trailers from even getting down there, because I know it's a really difficult way for them to turn around if there's any vehicles in that lower parking lot. So trying to keep people out of there as best we can, and providing some materials and assistance as best we can. But like I said, they're going to be disturbing that for at least a couple weeks, and then after that we'll hopefully have it open for Labor Day weekend. And that's all I had. Oh, I'm sorry. I do have one more piece. I did drop off an application with everybody. It's not necessarily looking for approval. It's a pretty small event. It's only 50 people and nothing too crazy, but it's Wonder Treks wanting to do an end of summer party. And one of the discussions was, is this something maybe in the future that the city wanted to partner with Wonder Trek to make this more of a city-sponsored event, kind of waiving the fees and make this a city event, having Katie kind of work with Wonder Trek to build this into our event schedule and make it more of a city event for an end of summer kind of party. So this is really kind of using some biodegradable bubbles. One of the comments that Katie said was to keep it away from the splash pad. So they're wanting to hold it at Memorial Park. So keeping that soap away from the splash pad, but in that area using blocks, really making it kind of a party. So again, something to keep in mind. Maybe this is something we'll bring maybe next spring or early summer, is something that if the park board is interested, that maybe we partner with Wonder Trek for that event.
I think Wonder Trek was one of the big attractions at the Last Dance of Summer last year, and they were a pretty big hit. So, cool. Board member reports.
I will start. Yeah, I went down to Kiwanis, like the Boyne Learning Trail. That thing looks pretty sweet. Swung down. It's a little longer than I thought it was going to be, but yeah, no, it's pretty neat. So otherwise, I think Kara and I have been working a little bit to try to get some history on the park system. Try to put together more of a marketing strategy for the Parks and Recreation Facebook page. So continuing to work on all of that sort of information, try to get access to the page itself, and then put together a more consistent schedule, get people aware of our parks and the amenities and events and history of each individual park. So a lot of work going into that, but otherwise, yeah, the Bourne Learning Trail, and I just love that there's no cars down there. Isn't that just great? So it just makes it way better. So but that's all I got.
Poking the bear.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Real quickly, I just wanted to say, hey, look, I've been on the park board for quite some time, not as long as some of you, but this is the first time where I went through a budgeting or kind of the budgeting work where I actually felt like we knew what we were doing and we worked cohesively with the city council together to come up with solutions. I just want to mention Mr. Johnson, who took some time out of his day to try to actually work towards finding a solution for us. Thank you, Gabe Johnson, much appreciated. Without that help, we might have been stumbling a much greater deal this evening. So kudos to the staff that's helped us with all the documents, the people that I sit with up here on this board, and then also all of our council members who are all participants in extra meetings and extra time and work, and more importantly, just kind of embracing what we're trying to do to be better. So thank you to everyone involved. We're still not quite there yet, but we have come a very long way. Thank you.
Nothing for me, Kara. Dave?
I just want, from the council side of things, I just want to thank you guys as well for your budgeting process. Again, I'll just reiterate the same things that Kevin said. It's been a long, spiky road, let's call it that way. Not even bumpy road, spiky road. And yeah, Gabe joining tonight, I had a conversation with him earlier today, just saying, I know that you guys are going into your budget conversation today. If you could stop by, it would greatly be appreciated, because we don't get to have those conversations enough. And you guys wondering what they're wondering and them wondering what you're thinking. It's not a matter of trying to, make sure that somebody's getting what they need. It's making sure that we're all on the same page and that there are checks and balances, but at the same time, we're getting to that same end goal. And I can't reiterate what you're saying enough. In terms of budgetary process, this is worlds beyond where the park has been, and it's going to show very quickly in the parks themselves. So,
With that, unless we'd like to hang out any longer.
To adjourn, Jaeger.
Second.
Adjourning to the
All in favor,
special
say aye.
session, right?
Special meeting,
12.
Yeah.
September 12th.
You don't have to adjourn to that, though. We do?
Okay, we'll make a motion to adjourn to the September 12th meeting, even if not necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.